Welcome to Current Conversations, a podcast imagined by Be Alive and Rivers Are Life, where we discuss freshwater systems, the important role that rivers and watersheds play in our world, and how educating conservationists leads to a healthier planet. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode and for being a part of a ripple of action that is creating change. I'm Julia co-host of our show and impact manager for Rivers Are Life and Be Alive.
And I'm Arielle Roth, your other co-host and community manager for Rivers Are Life. Today we're chatting with two incredible storytellers and environmentalists. Zachary Green is president of Be Alive and Be Alive Studios, a veteran television executive with projects that can be found on the Discovery Channel, National Geographic, History Channel, USA, Netflix, and Peacock. Green began his career on CBS's Survivor and has overseen production on numerous projects, including History Channel's Alone and Top Shot, Discovery Channel's franchise Out of the Wild, and USA's Mud, Sweat, and Beards. He specializes in crafting human interest stories in some of the most wild and rugged environments on the planet.
Our other guest today is Chris Keefer, CEO of Be Alive Inc. and a co-founder of Rivers Are Life. Chris is a proven outdoor adventure media production veteran, entrepreneur, and passionate outdoor enthusiast. Over the past 20 years, he has built media production houses and agencies in the outdoor industry, created linear and digital content series, building new and existing brands, storytelling, and acting in popular outdoor network shows for the Travel Channel and Outdoor Channel. In 2019, Chris successfully launched Be Alive Inc., which imagined the storytelling platform Rivers Are Life. Well, thank you both so much for being a part of today's podcast episode. I just want to start out with you, Chris. How are you doing? How are things going?
I am doing great. I'm just enduring the weather here in Michigan over the last couple of days, but feels great. I think it's starting to shape up a little better out there, so I'm good.
Glad to hear it. Could you give us a little bit of background about yourself and your work for those of us that don't know?
Sure. So currently the CEO of Be Alive Inc., our parent company, and one of the kind of original members here, as is Zach, and the two of us have been working together since 2000 and I think 16-ish, somewhere in there, building out what is now today Be Alive. My background is a little bit in everything from brand building, entrepreneurship, kind of owning and operating businesses, building businesses, and then also in the production space, from kind of having a production company and also in front of the camera on certain things. So I've been kind of able to travel the world, and it's taken me to a lot of different places. But from a business side, it's really about kind of bringing it all together and making it all work as one seamless business, and that sometimes is the hard part.
Yeah, and you obviously touched on that, Chris. You and Zach know one another, but for listeners that might not know you, Zach, could you give some background on you as well?
Absolutely. So to lay the groundwork, I'm the president of Be Alive Studios, chief creative officer at Be Alive Inc., sort of the parent company. So all the various films and series and content that we're creating sort of rolls up to the studio team and I guess ultimately to me. But really, like Chris, I love to travel. I love to explore. I love adventure. I love going to the farthest places, farthest reaches, of the earth. And when I was in my 20s, I sort of thought to myself, how can I do this and get paid to do it? And I found out about this world of television and storytelling, and I was like, I'm going to do that. And that's how I got started. And I spent 20 years plus doing just that. So producing shows, executive producing shows and producing shows all over the world for Discovery Channel, History Channel, Discovery, CBS, Netflix, and the like. I've seen it go from, just broadcast television to the cable genre to now to streamers and now into the digital age. So it's been a fascinating road from the beginnings of sort of the non-scripted and documentary space to where we are today, and putting all those pieces together, as Chris said, in the brand building space that we're in at Be Alive.
Yeah. So putting those pieces together, I'm glad you mentioned that because, Be Alive and Rivers Are Life, they work together, these two brands, these two organizations. Could you all talk about how our organizations work together and what were your goals in forming them originally?
Yeah, go, Chris. I mean, we both can wax poetic on this.
Yeah, exactly. Zach and I've had this conversation many, many times in late nights on how this all comes together. I think it's one of the hardest pieces, but I think simplistically, at Be Alive, our whole goal, and there's been various iterations of this over the years, in any startup business, you have an idea where you want to go. And I think it's all about the pivot and how you make changes. And along the way, we've been able to do that. So at the heart of it, what our goal is building purpose-driven communities. That's what we do best. And we do that through content, which is our kind of fastball here, is telling stories through content, through building communities, both online and offline, and through collaborations with like-minded individuals. And so when we started this method of our business, we had the Be Alive brand, which is all about moments matter. It's all about, getting outside, celebrating, living your best moment. And a lot of those moments have been celebrated in Be Alive kind of situations. And so we kind of built that up, which allowed us to now add brands underneath our name, Be Alive, and underneath the company. And Rivers Are Life was one of those brands that was a very, very different idea when we started. And I can kind of let Zach touch on that to what it has become today. It was just a completely different pivot. But that's what we've been able to do, is kind of build these purpose-driven communities. They work together because we care about the moments that matter, and Rivers are a part of that. And so building another brand and creating current conversations and other things that you ladies are doing, it's incredible to see where the brand has gone in just the short, year and a half to 2 years that we've been out in the public space. So that's kind of what Be Alive does, and is we're the aggregator of all things meaningful, and we start to put brands underneath it, and we start to tell those stories. So, but it definitely wasn't where we started, and it definitely has changed. Zach, I'd have to say that where we're at today versus what we thought it was going to be is different.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so true. But what I'll say is, to add on to what Chris is saying, is Be Alive, some of the core values really are about protecting wild places. Like all of our touch points, and this goes back to some of our earliest days of inspire, protect, and explore, like sort of tenets that run deeply through all things Be Alive. And out of that, the storytelling, the brands we want to work with, the projects that we get behind, the teams we work with, everything has some touch point within those three pillars. And Rivers Are Life is like the penultimate, sort of gem in the crown of that, right? So how do we take all these years of experience in the storytelling space that we've been in, or the brand building spaces that we've been in, or building businesses, take all of that and put it into something that's going to do some really amazing good in the world. And I've worked on projects that I'm hyper proud of, and I've worked on projects that were just for my resume because I needed a job, in my 20s. This is something that we can be proud of. Rivers Are Life was sort of born from this crazy statistic that has since been debunked of, all this waste, 95% of waste entering the ocean is coming there through rivers. Now, through just 10 rivers. So that sparked this idea of like, what can we do to shine a light on that? Nobody's talking about that in a really targeted way. Oceans are getting their just desserts, and they should. Everybody's talking about oceans. There's entertainment projects about oceans. There's news articles. There's communities. There's organizations devoted to it. But rivers are so vital, and I would say equally as vital as oceans. But they weren't getting sort of the attention. And so Rivers Are Life was really born from that statistic, and then we've gone on, as I said, to sort of debunk that, and then through research found other statistics that are equally as astounding. But to do some good and do it in using tools that we have in our toolkit, right? Storytelling, brand building, community building, bringing all these different people from all over the world under one roof and saying, this is the community of people doing great work, solving problems along the river. So it's all interconnected, from our Be Alive sort of roots to what we do professionally, to what we do recreationally, right? Whether that's hunting or skiing or climbing or fishing or whatever it is, we want to protect the places that we play.
Yeah, and we've talked about that so much on this show, about how nature is one thing, or we talk about laughter with Be Alive, how it's the same in every language. But nature really is the same thing too. Like, our environment might look different, but we all understand the sound of rain or a river flowing, or we all have those experiences with it. And we really, as a company, have pushed out content that really does inspire in whatever way it may be, whether it's a short film on a river hero or, pushing and getting outside, any of that. Zach, I'm going to leave this next question to you. But that comes with a good amount of storytelling, which we're seeing the shift in content really leaning towards that right now. But what is the power of a good story?
I have found in my career that there is nothing more powerful than a good story. I mean, historically, right? I mean, our history, our lessons were passed down, in an oral tradition, even from our earliest, days, earliest human days, right? My degree is in archaeology. So I was a study of like human behavior, a study of like ancient human civilizations, and not a storyteller. I knew nothing about television or storytelling. And I sort of picked it up, as I've gone along over the years. But every great thing that's happened in this world has started with the story, how it's been told, how it's impacted the listener or the audience. And Rivers Are Life and Be Alive, it is no different. To inspire action, to inspire an audience to say, what can I do as an individual, even if it's small? Turning off the faucet when I'm brushing my teeth, or riding my bike one day a week, or skipping meat one day a week. All of these things have a collective impact that are great. But to do that through the authentic storytelling, the character-driven approach that we're taking, certainly at Rivers Are Life, it's super powerful. These people are inspiring. They're doing amazing work, and to be able to tell their story in a really creative way, it's gratifying. And we're finding that the audience is adhering to it. And the landscape in the entertainment space is completely upside down. It's changing drastically from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly from 20 years ago. It is not the same. And we're finding a bit of a white space, I think, in the entertainment space, doing good for, we're a purpose, it's a great purpose-driven brand, a great purpose-driven company. And if we can entertain and educate and create action, cause positive action, then we're winning all day, every day.
Absolutely. And I like what you said about being character driven too. We're not just telling the stories about rivers themselves, we're telling the stories of the people who work in and around and for those rivers. And I think that really resonates with everybody. And I think that's special for Rivers Are Life. So Chris, I want to turn to you. How do you, what do you envision in terms of using that storytelling power? How do you envision us using that for Rivers Are Life, specifically in this brand and this storytelling platform?
Well, it's a great question. I think first and foremost, the stories that we do tell, our characters are doing great, as you both have mentioned. They're doing great things. Where Rivers Are Life can really use it as a story of hope. Unfortunately, in the landscape of media today, I think there's a lot of negative press around anything, right? There's too much plastic in the ocean. There's a lot of waste here. There's a lot of, you can go on and on about the things that happen. And I also think there's amazing people doing amazing things. And what you don't hear about is the story of hope. You don't hear about, the Fred Tutmans of the world on the river, the Cash Daniels that are doing things at the age of 12 and 13, 14, and the young generation that are actually putting their boots on and strapped up and going out there and doing it. And I think that needs to be where Rivers Are Life can come in and give that awareness to those stories of hope. I think that's a big thing that we do, is we try to really think about the solutions and the organizations and the companies that want to do great things, even the ones that may have had some unintended consequences in the past. I think, there's things that we've done in the past as an entire nation that we didn't understand was going to affect us the way it is right now. And so those companies that understand they may be part of the problem, but they also have to be part of the solution and are putting out things and doing things well, that's something to celebrate. I think we always use the term progress over perfection here, because we do need progress. We're never going to get it right 100% the first time, but it is important that we keep pushing and we keep trying to find those solutions, and those people are doing it. So I think it's really about using those stories of hope for awareness. And again, a story that's never told is not a story. So we have to go tell them, right? And that's our goal, is to go tell those stories and help those individuals. And focus on hope. We're all about being positive here. We can't have a name like Be Alive and not be alive and say, let's go talk about hope. If we were negative, it would suck the life out of us. We've got to focus on that. So that's what I would say is mostly just focusing on that.
Yeah, I would fully agree with the progress over perfection. We talked about that earlier too, and Zach, you touched on it, that it's not always doing everything moving forward to make a change. It's doing one thing or implementing one item, whether that is a reusable straw or like I recently switched to a shampoo, bar and conditioner, and sometimes watching these films, we try and live up to that too and think that we need to be doing everything when it is one small change. So when it comes to sustainability, what are things that you think people get wrong or overthink or forget?
For me, I think people get frozen into inaction. They don't know what to do, so they do nothing. And I think that they also sometimes think, oh, I'm just one person. What sort of impact can I make, on my own? And I think that's exactly like to your point, Arielle. It's like, if everybody did just one small thing every day, then collectively the collective impact is so great. And to your point, I think these films, the river heroes, are such an inspiration to show, like, okay, maybe I'm not going out every single day, for the way that some of these river heroes are every day, like boots on the ground, cleaning up a river. But if I do one thing every day, and if every single person did one thing every day, the collective impact is so great. And so for me, I think it is just recognize that small actions create big actions. And, and there's that snowball effect. And, Chris, to your point, there's a lot of doom and gloom in the world, and you can, and that can really get people down too. So to raise your head up beyond that and look out and see that there are actual positive solutions. There are companies that have been part of the problem that are now part of the solution, shouldering the load, because it's everybody's problem. It's not easy. It's not Africa's problem. It's not Asia's problem. It's not Europe's problem. It's not North America's problem. It's global. It's a global issue. It impacts us all equally. And we all need to be doing a little bit better. And if each one of us does a little bit better every day, just a tiny bit, one decision, the forward progress is gonna, it's gonna be great.
I think also going off of that, like someone else may have the capacity to do X, Y, and Z, whereas we may only have the capacity to do X. But in terms of that capacity level, we are actually doing the same amount for what that individual is capable of versus comparing to what another person is doing.
Yeah, I think, back to kind of both of your points, I think a big maybe problem that we have, or a misconception, is probably the education. I think, like you mentioned earlier, like it's just education on what they can and can't do. I think a lot of people get hung up in that. It's kind of the analyze to paralyze, right? Everyone's like analyzing what they can do, or I don't know how to necessarily recycle, or maybe my municipality doesn't have wine bottles. So then now what do I do? And it becomes like, I don't know what to do. And I think even at Rivers of Life, we did some proprietary research. And I think even at that, there was 50% admitted that, they don't know enough about the current situation to make a change. So it has to be around awareness, education, and how to get involved, no matter how little or big it is. And I think education is where we can come in and bring that awareness to those people. So I know I'm learning every single day. I like to say I'm green-ish when I started, right? Everybody has a little bit in them. Like I'm trying to figure it out, but I can tell you that my household has adapted a lot of different things that we did not do 5 years ago that, we're trying to focus on. And you don't realize how much it does. Little bit makes a big difference, whether it's an individual effort, to your point, and that's what my portion is, but I'm making a big change. So,
yeah, it's always so interesting to hear the different ways that people make changes individually and how unique they can be. But I mean, they're about as unique as the people we feature in our films, right? And going back to that idea of every single person having their own cool story worth telling. And that's part of the reason we're so excited for this episode, is that we get to turn the camera back on y'all and the mic to you, because you're two of the biggest drivers of Rivers Are Life behind the scenes. So with that in mind, is there a little bit of your story, a message, an idea, something you'd like to share?
That's a great question, Zach.
It's a great question. I mean, it makes me think. So, I mentioned archaeology earlier, but I have a separate degree in environmental studies, and so for me, like things are coming full circle. Like things that I did, ages ago, I'm now bringing back to the forefront of sort of my daily life. And one of the people that really truly inspired me, you know, during that process in that field is a gentleman by the name of Edward Abbey, and he's got a quote. He says, "Wilderness is not a luxury, but a necessity of the human spirit." And that's like so holds true for me and for what we do and how I approach, not just Be Alive, but Rivers Are Life and how, our storytelling. But I think it is wilderness, the natural environment. It is what it keeps everything going on this planet. And to be able to do some good, to be able to participate, Ariel, to your point earlier about what can we do as individual contributors. I'm not a scientist. I'm not, a mathematician. I'm not a specialist when it comes to sustainability, but I know that have a deep, deep love for the natural world, and I can tell a pretty good story. And if I can use that to, have a positive impact and some positive change, then I feel like I can hold my head up high and say I'm doing my part in driving, the good forward. And I think if we can each find our role within that, then collectively we shoulder the greater load.
For me, I mean, just the business of what we're doing is exciting. And Zach and I, we have so many different meetings and that go well into the evening, and working on the back end, as you mentioned, of the business. But in reality, it's not us that's driving it forward. We set the kind of tone and the precedence, but it is our amazing team. It is the people that are boots on the ground that are actually making the change. We have a saying that no one is bigger than the sweater, because we all wear the Be Alive sweater, the Rivers Are Life sweater. We work as a team. And I think that carries over in the stories that we tell as well, because it is a group effort. We go further together than we do individually. And I'm just so ecstatic of where this has come from, the years of grinding when there was three of us and we were trying to figure out where this business is going to go. And every day was a different version of the business. Every day was a different deck, a different organizational structure, a different, business model. And for us to be able to kind of pull all that together, it has taken an entire team of individuals that have bought into the system and understand where we're going. And I just kind of lift up everybody in the whole organization to say, we care. And whatever team you stand on, nature and protecting those places is at the core of what we do. I'm a hunter in my free time and a conservationist at the exact same time to try to protect the animals of the planet, as well as, the rivers and where we go and the national parks, because there is something about stepping outside, regardless of what day you've had and what's going on, and just breathing some fresh air and understanding everything is going to be okay. And it'll center you, it'll bring you right. And a nice kayak on a river that's clean can change the mindset of an individual. And so that has to stay here. We cannot lose that. So we fight hard for it, but we fight as a team. So that's kind of where we're at. Is Zach and I have the conversations, and we love to think big. At the same time, we put it to the team to say we're not the experts, and so we just understand where to take it. But at the same time, it's being taken there by a lot of individuals that are doing great things.
So talking about those big talks and you guys having these ideas that we bring to life, and our production team and our studio team and all of us on brand and marketing, for our listeners who are part of this community, who also enjoy the kayak at the end of a day or stepping outside into nature to calm down or share those moments with us, what can they expect moving forward aside from just current conversations? You guys are the first guest on this episode. We have tons of great films coming out this year, but what other things, as we get ready to close out this interview, can people be excited for?
That's a great question. So there's so much. So my mind is going in a few different places, but we're expanding certainly on the Rivers Are Life side. We're expanding from the short film space, which we'll continue to do that, but into episodic series. So we have one coming out on the Amazon. We're filming that next month. And then we have another 6-part series highlighting, our past river heroes, the ones that have already been featured, but reimagining their stories and to further that message. And we're starting to create distribution partnerships. So it's getting a little bit more mainstream attention, which is great. So awareness will continue to grow on that front and along parallel with the brand stories. But like from a Be Alive perspective, from a studio perspective, my background is in long form television, and a lot of our team members on the studio side come from that space too. Chris comes from that space. So we're starting to dive into it, our roots, right? The adventure content. Chris comes from the survival space. I come from the survival space. I've got shows in development in that space. So hopefully this year we get a couple of those off the ground, and the studio continues to grow from a Be Alive perspective outside the walls of Rivers Are Life.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with that 100%. And then I would say that, again, over the years of building a business, there are so many different versions of yourself. And for me, I feel so good coming into 2024 with, kind of our business model locked and our partnerships expanding, which is exciting for Rivers Are Life. Being able to kind of bring on additional big partners to tell more stories and the expansion of what we do, which is that content, that community. I think seeing Rivers Are Life, both online and offline, I think is going to be exciting to have some events and impact projects and collaboration. So there's a lot coming down the pike here, and we're very excited about expanding Rivers Are Life and continuing to build what we've started. And so it's just catching fire right now, and it's things like this that make it exciting to see that we're sitting here, we're having a podcast. We're honored to be the first guest. I don't know why you chose Zach and I to be the first guest, but we're honored to be that. So it's exciting just to see this alone. This is an expansion of what we're doing with Rivers Are Life, and hopefully, and I know you'll execute brilliantly and bring amazing people in that care about this. And if you do, we ask them to join the movement, because it is a movement. We need everybody.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I just want to thank you both so much for being a part of this episode and for doing everything that you're doing. You inspire so many people, including us here. So,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goes both
Absolutely.
ways. We appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for having us. And this is awesome. Can't wait to see who else is joining the mix and maybe come back and talk again as things progress. But it's so fun. I will just leave it at this. Chris and I, from back in the day when we originally conceptualized Rivers Are Life, and we look back at, like he said, deck after deck after deck that was created. Things that are happening today are coming to light, becoming a reality from just being on paper all those years ago, and it's amazing. And this is one of those things. The podcast is one of those things that we envisioned. And we're so proud to that you're bringing it to life. So thank you for doing it.
Thanks, guys.
Cool.